what's going on, y'all? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And you're about to watch a little OTB LSU.
We're going to give you all the latest, greatest between LSU football, baseball, women's basketball, softball, and everything in between.
Bottom line, if you want to talk Tigers, keep it locked, subscribe, like it, and we hope you enjoy it. Let's talk about Brian Kelly to Michigan. Now, off the jump, the main point why I think this story doesn't matter that much is because all the reporting is saying that Sharon Moore is the target, is meeting with Michigan officials today, is already reaching out to other to potential staff members and candidates. So this feels like it's Sharon Moore written all over it. So I think that the question is, okay, well then why, right? And I think there we arrive at the first point of why I think it is crazy to think that Brian Kelly, and again, not to say that this couldn't happen, because I've been in this job long enough and I'm not naive enough to pretend like, everything's always on the table in some sense. So sometimes you're going to get these long odds, insane moments that you never would have expected. But from a cold, logical standpoint, this move would be crazy. And as I said, first off, one of the main differences, and the reason why you're targeting Sharon Moore if you're Michigan, Jake, is because Brian Kelly would not be taking over a bad program in which you can reshape it in your image. That's exactly what he was able to do here at LSU. He would be taking over an established culture that has been cultivated and pruned and grown for 9 years and just culminated in a perfect season and a national championship. What do we talk about with the New Orleans Saints? Right? They try to continue, and even Sharon Moore is going to run into some of this, but they try to continue that Sean Payton era, going from Sean Payton to Dennis Allen, and all of a sudden, when you have a new guy following the guy who was great, who was the guy, there's always going to be friction more. Even more friction if it's an outsider, right? And who's going to come and look to tear everything down and build it back up. And that friction is very hard to overcome, and maybe more importantly, takes time to overcome. And that's kind of the second point where I'm at, Jake. Kelly's on the clock. He's 62 years old.
Yeah.
Saban, 72. Belichick, 71. Carroll, 72. What's he got, a decade? Just been 3 years building to this point at LSU. Now you're going to start over and go do that again at Michigan and make new relationships, learn the recruiting scene once again, learn who the people you need to know are. That takes time that I don't know that Kelly necessarily has. And then the last thing I'd say is just that he gets everything he wants from LSU.
That was going to be where I started.
The financial support, the hiring support, the alignment with Scott Woodward. Like very famously, Ward Manuel and Jim Harbaugh were at each other's throats for much of his tenure up there. Michigan is not a school that is traditionally committed to athletics above all else. Which, maybe that's the way you should run it, but it ain't how LSU runs it. And so, again, the way you run it at LSU. Jake, from a cold, logical standpoint, those are my three main things that I'm hitting on. I just don't see it.
Yeah, and I know this rumor got started, 7 weeks ago with Billy Lucci on our podcast with Doring, and then Moscona had a clip, and so a lot of people have talked about it. I can't see it happening for all the reasons that T-Bob said, and also you don't leave LSU. The one person that left LSU, Coach Saban, it was because he had an NFL itch, just like Jim Harbaugh. And that's why he decided to leave. And then, he wanted to come back, and then it was too late at that point. You have everything at LSU. You have all the resources. You have all the desire. You have all the fan support. You have, I don't want to say easy because it's never easy to recruit.
Yeah.
But you can walk out your back door and fall into a lot of 4 or 5 star recruits in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. You can go to New Orleans, you can stay in Baton Rouge, you can go to Lafayette, you can go to Shreveport, you can go all over the state. And so there's so many things that are built in that give LSU a lot of advantages and things that are highly intriguing to head coaches. And it's been a grind for Brian Kelly to build to where they're at right now. Right? The thing that he took over, we know is right after the Texas Bowl. He was at that Texas Bowl. So he saw the challenges ahead of him, and you get to an SEC championship game in year one. Year two, maybe not where you wanted to go, but still you finished number 12 in the country. You would have been on the verge of being in a 12-team playoff. One slot up, and you would have been there. So if that's going to be your air quote down season, okay, and you're right. You won a Heisman Trophy. You should have won the Blitnikoff. You're going to have 3 first-round picks. All those things are why you're the LSU head coach. And so I can't see a sitting LSU head coach going anywhere else in college football and leaving LSU behind. Like T-Bob said, you never say never in this profession. You don't speak in absolutes. We leave that to Sis, T-Bob.
Yeah.
Get it right?
Look at that.
Got it right again.
Look at that.
That's the
Star
second
Wars.
time
It's a
in a
Star
row.
Wars guy, dude.
So that part of it, honestly, to me, it doesn't have legs right now. Brian Kelly and LSU are getting ready for winter workouts. They already started those, right? We've seen videos of that. That's what they're worried about right now. And then the Michigan portion of it, Sherrone Moore, it makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah.
For where the current climate is, T-Bob, look, he filled in and beat the hardest teams on your schedule, Penn State, Maryland, and Ohio State, like the game.
Yeah.
Like he's already shown that he can handle that. And also the other portion of it is you don't want all of your players in that 30-day portal window to go into the transfer portal.
Yeah.
Now, you're going to have some, but you would have a lot if you hired anybody from the outside to be your head coach. Sherrone Moore's your head coach. I think you have a third of what would go in if it was somebody else coming in. And Michigan has to look at things like that because nobody's available to bring back to you.
I agree. And look, if you look at the rise of Moore at Michigan, he's been there, I think, 6 years. He started as a tight ends coach, and he was the O-line coach. He was the architect behind the back-to-back Joe Moore winners. Could have been back-to-back-to-back Joe Moore winners. He starts calling plays, and while Michigan is not overwhelming from a volume standpoint, that was by design. They are overwhelming from an efficiency standpoint offensively. And again, he knows that culture that Harbaugh has established a better than anyone else would, and feasibly could continue it. And he'll still run into friction. He'll still run into the issues that, like a Dennis Allen or somebody ran into, but it's not nearly as extreme if you try to hit the full reset button with a brand new head coach like Brian Kelly, who, again, is going to want to take. And I mean, what did Kelly talk about? I mean, Kelly's very process oriented, right? Like all these great coaches has been since day one since he's been here. And what did he constantly say about the process? Doesn't happen overnight. Doesn't happen in 1 year. Doesn't happen in 2. It takes a couple of years for best practices to get instilled, for habits to be formed. And now that he's finally at that tipping point, he kept circling year 3. He's going to go start over and do it all again? I just don't think it makes any sense, except from the perspective of an agent, where it always behooves your client's name to be attached to big jobs, to have the threat of leaving, to get raises and whatnot. But again, Kelly has everything he wants here. Scott Woodward gives him everything he wants. Look at the hires over this offseason and the money invested therein. Look at his contract himself and the financial and job security that he has and how rare that is in college football. And I can't go back to enough the alignment between him and Woodward, because as a college head coach, I don't think there's anything more frustrating than feeling like you have an AD that maybe doesn't support you or isn't on the same page as you, and nothing could be further from the truth here at LSU. So, and Zach Zinter on the Sherrone Moore, I forgot to mention this, the Sherrone Moore front. Zach Zinter, their excellent leader and captain of that offensive line, tweeted yesterday, quote, "No interviews needed. It's Papa Moore's time." So I think we're going to just get a confirmation that it's Sherrone Moore after that meeting with Michigan officials today.
No, you're 100% T-Bob. And the biggest pushback we've heard from people that are like, Michigan's a big-time program. They're not going to hire from within. Not only will they have. Gary Moeller was a 10-year assistant coach that they hired back in 1990 to be their head coach. Right after that, y'all remember Lloyd Carr? He was an assistant at Michigan. They do this quite often. They're a lot like Texas. Anytime Texas is looking for a coach, they say, "Is he a Texas guy?" Whatever.
Yeah, they're Michigan
very similar.
men. They're all
Michigan
about
men.
men.
You hear it all the time. No, not only will they do this, like they have a track record of doing this multiple times in recent memory.
So
that Michigan man stuff, you and I, T-Bob, experienced it with Coach Miles. Like, he talked about it a ton.
Bro, how similar are Harbaugh and Miles, personality-wise? It's actually crazy. Like, you see some of these stories that are coming out. Like, I saw one recruit, I can't remember who it was, talking about how he sat down in Harbaugh's office for the first time, and Harbaugh just sat there for 2 minutes, silent, looking around the room. Didn't say a word. Just sat there looking around the room for 2 minutes before he finally was like, "Hey." And that has Coach Miles written all of it. Them Schembechler boys are just freaking quirky, dude. And
It's a little bit different. Like Coach Miles is a little bit more outgoing and like willing to have conversations than Harbaugh, but like some of the stuff that he says and does
They're
and
just
like
a
the
little thrown
quirkiness, the quirkiness, like for sure.
And Schembechler was like that too,
Yeah.
right? Like famously. But yeah, I mean, I thought Joshua Perry, an Ohio State guy that me and you do work with sometimes, I thought it was very interesting when he used a lot of the same, because we don't really know the Big Ten like they do, right? Like people from that part of the country don't appreciate the intricacies of the SEC and the cultural things that we take for granted. And so it was real interesting to hear him use the same language talking about Michigan that we use talking about Texas A&M. Basically saying it's a little culty. It kind of takes a different cat to buy in. And so, just another reason why I think they probably go with more. And then, this is one of those odd situations where if more doesn't work, it still is probably the best play forward. And then if it doesn't work, you give the marketplace a couple years to develop, and then you go after a big dog if you feel like you want one. Like, I feel like you at least have to try this more route first and then hit reset instead of just immediately hitting reset off the bat.
So when you start talking about the dynamics of that place and what it is, I was telling you this the other day, like they have, like they name their teams like Team 140, Team 144, Team, and I think this team was 144. But like on the sidelines, all these former players had jerseys on and had a 0 like for the number on the front and back. And I'm like, what's going on there? And I look on the back, Team 138. Yeah. Team 130. I'm like, what the hell is that? Like, what's going on? But like to your point, like that's something we don't know a whole lot about, but like that is like built into who they are. We are not this. We are Team 144 in this long history of Michigan football. So they've got their things in that program, like Texas A&M and others do. But it's just another reason why I think Sherrone Moore is going to be the guy. It's like he's already in that. He knows that. He has the identity and the culture and all that already down. And that's what they're looking for. Like they want something like that. And I know somebody inside the chat said, he doesn't even call his own plays. He doesn't design those plays. I spent a week with him. I just spent a week with him. He calls the plays.
Yeah, what do you mean he's on the play call?
He calls the plays. And he said it's Harbaugh's design. Well, every head coach is going to have his fingerprint on the offense if he's an offensive guy. But it is no doubt him calling the plays, because on the big tight end play that Michigan hit in the national championship game, like the Y over, that was Harbaugh. Like he's like, hey, kind of like Les, I really think we should run it here.
Yeah, no, but that's known.
Every coach.
No, that's known. I mean, I was reading reporting this morning about even when he was in San Francisco with Greg Roman calling plays, that it was understood in the hierarchy that Harbaugh had the power to override and call what he wanted. So that's known. But Sherrone Moore was the play caller, and there was no Harbaugh in those big games again, right? That Michigan won. So
I think that helps him, right? See, I mean that helps him. Like he fits already, all that, but it just helps him the fact that yes, he beat Penn State and Maryland, which were good teams. I mean, Maryland blew out Auburn in a bowl game. Penn State had a nice regular season, but he beat Ohio State, and we don't have that understanding of what that is because we don't have that. We don't have that. We don't have that one team.
Yeah.
Like, sure, it's Alabama now, but it hasn't always been them. That to them, we had Ross Bjork, who's a new AD at Ohio State on Tuesday. Like, he's already speaking the language of what the Michigan game means. Like, it's the first.
A freaking snake in the grass.
He said it's the first thing that they told me when we were driving around campus. He's like, wait a minute, all these M's on campus have red X's through them. This is a little more than even I thought. As somebody's coming over from A&M. Like, he didn't play in the Texas rivalry because he wasn't there. He was at Ole Miss, but still, like, that is like number one on the bullets is Ohio State, and vice versa for Michigan. So he did that, and that's going to go a long way, and that might have been the feather in the cap to say, okay, we can go ahead and hire him.
Wow, Jake, what incredible takes.
I mean, those guys, they're just the best.
I think so. And if you think so, again, hit the like button, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications when we post every single day here on OTB LSU.